So welcome everyone. My name is Adashima Oyo. I'm the Executive Director of the Futures Initiative. So some of you may know a lot about the Futures Initiative and others may know nothing at all. So I'm here to just give a little bit of a blurb about what we do, and then I'll turn it over to Christina. So the Futures Initiative was founded in 2014 by Dr. Kathy and Davidson. The Futures Initiative advances for equity and innovation in higher education. We're physically housed here at the CUNY Graduate Center, but our work extends all over CUNY, all over the campuses. The Futures Initiative provides programming for undergraduate students all the way to doctoral level students. We have a very great FI advisory board with representation from faculty from almost all of the CUNY schools, including our professional schools. So just to give you a little bit of a small idea of some of our programming, we have the undergraduate CUNY Peer Leaders Program. That's a CUNY-wide program. We also have 3 research grants for MA students and PhD students. We offer our team toward courses where we pair one central line GC faculty with a CUNY faculty member at one of our undergraduate campuses. And we also have Haystack. Haystack is our online network of student scholars. We do this in partnership with Dartmouth. Haystack, according to the National Science Foundation, has been known as the world's oldest academic social network. We have competitive fellowships for PhD students. If you don't know about it, please follow us on our social media to see all of our grants and fellowships. We have a monthly newsletter. And then lastly, we have public-facing events like the one that you're here to participate in today. I encourage you all to visit our website, to follow us on social media, and to subscribe to our newsletter. So I'm going to briefly introduce Dr. Christina Katopodis before turning it over to her. So Dr. Christina Katopodis, also a former FI fellow, is a senior postdoctoral research associate at the City University of New York's CUNY Humanities Alliance. She is currently pursuing a research on the indispensable role of humanities education. She has 2 boys, ages 1 and 4, and she enjoys baking with her eldest and playing with brio trains with her youngest. She is a co-author with Kathy and Davidson of the New College Classroom with Harvard University Press. Christina, I'll turn it over to you now.
All right. Welcome, everyone. I have the distinct pleasure of introducing today's panelists. We have Arielle Shanok, who has had the great privilege of serving the GC student community for the past 14 years. She has been trained in dynamic family systems, interpersonal, supportive, cognitive, behavioral, dialectical, behavioral, and group systems therapies. She integrates these methods to best help each individual student, couple, or group with their particular concerns and goals. Co-editor and co-author of Thriving in Graduate School, The Expert's Guide to Success and Wellness. Dr. Shanok has additionally published articles and book chapters in the areas of psychotherapy, effectiveness, gender, money, and adolescent pregnancy. Her approach incorporates compassion, a strength focus, and multicultural humility. Merdith Manze is an associate professor in the Department of Community Health and Social Sciences and director of the Community Health and Health Policy PhD program at the CUNY School of Public Health. She has a bachelor's in public health from Johns Hopkins University, an MPH in maternal and child health, and PhD in health services research, both from Boston University School of Public Health. Her mixed methods research is informed by a reproductive justice framework and most recently has focused on the expansion of reproductive health services in primary care and investigating how colleges can better support students who have children. All of this is such important work. Okay. Estefany Gonzaga is a dedicated professional with over 10 years of experience in higher education, specializing in the intersection of technology and student success. She has started her career in 2014 as a mentor within the Student Success Mentor Program here at the GC, where she mentored students taking the first year seminar studio Our Lab and rose to the role of program coordinator at LaGuardia Community College. Demonstrating exceptional leadership and a passion for empowering students to thrive. Estefany was also a peer mentor in the Futures Initiative undergraduate leadership program 2016 to 2017 and holds an Associate of Science in Business Administration from LaGuardia Community College and a bachelor's in business and graphic communication from Baruch College. She is pursuing a Master of Arts in Digital Humanities at the CUNY Graduate Center. Parisa Osmanovich is a mom of 4 young children, ages 2, 6, 7, and 10, and a 5th-year doctoral student in the Department of Sociology at the Graduate Center. There she is. Hello. She began her doctoral studies in fall 2019 as a mom of a 1, 2, and 5-year-old before COVID hit. Oh God. Her interests include the intersections of economic sociology, immigration, religion, culture, and race and ethnicity. She received her MA in Middle Eastern and Islamic Studies from NYU, and her doctoral research at the GC continues to explore the financial inclusion of Muslim Americans and their access to mobility. Rod Hurley is a father of 3 daughters and 2 sons. He is a PhD student in critical social personality psychology at the Graduate Center and an adjunct lecturer at the College of Staten Island. His research explores the role of music, both as a tool for solidarity and social change in immigrant communities and communities of color, and as a medium for personal expression and identity development in the lives of musicians themselves. Rod is also a recording artist, songwriter, digital music producer, and a former director of the Copyright Society for Composers, Authors, and Publishers in Barbados, where he has worked for many years as an advocate for intellectual property rights for independent artists. Introduced.
Yep.
Okay. It was one of those mornings when like drop off was kind of nightmarish, and so
Yeah.
I like the short-term memory just isn't there. Okay. All right. First, we're going to start off with Arielle's presentation. Arielle.
Hi, thank you so much. Thank you, Christina. Thank you, Rod. Thank you, everyone else at Futures Initiative. It's a real honor to be presenting with this group of panelists. I'm going to talk briefly. I'm going to kind of name some themes that I imagine you'll get into more deeply, things that all of those of us who are parenting are very aware of. Maybe it will be validating to hear these things, since I think being a parenting graduate student can be a very isolating experience. And then I'm going to also talk briefly about services that you have access to at the Wellness Center. So I'm going to share my screen. Okay. Can you all see this okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, great. So I start with this slide. Is it possible to do graduate school while parenting? Because this question actually comes up a lot, both by people who are considering having kids in graduate school and also by people who are parenting, and I think, you know, losing their minds several times a day. So just sharing the statistic, it varies depending on source, but 5 to 10% of graduate students are parents, so you are not alone. And by the way, I think this is the first such event that I've been at the Graduate Center since 2007, and the only parenting events that I've been aware of have been by a few that we did at the Wellness Center. So really bravo and thank you, and hopefully it's more will come of this, because parenting graduate students really deserve a round of applause every single day that you get through. So I'm going to start by just naming some of the positives about parenting in graduate school, as well as some of the challenges. So the good, it really gives you perspective to have children. So, you know, when that grant proposal is rejected, when that paper doesn't get accepted, you go home, you get a hug from, you know, those little arms wrapped around your neck, and it just puts everything in perspective. Prioritizing, knowing that time to focus on schoolwork is a sparse commodity. Parenting grad students are usually more productive than students who assume they'll have time later. And I've seen this time and again in the students that I've had the privilege of working with. You got to get stuff done when you have that hour, the baby's napping, the other one's at a play date. You just have to, crank it out. And compared with 9-to-5ers who have to, work off, not at home, or 8 to 6ers and the commute, you probably do get to spend more time with your kids than if you were, it's never in this country, it is never a good time to have children. But there certainly are some benefits, to doing it in graduate school, and that's one of them. So the bad and the ugly, as I'm sure you're well aware, supporting yourself on a grad school stipend in New York City is hard enough, let alone supporting additional people who need childcare, diapers, et cetera, et cetera. The constant juggling. I mean, you have 3 full-time jobs. You're earning a living for not just yourself, but your family. You're doing a graduate program and you're parenting. So by the way, thank you very much for being here, because I know you're taking time away from your 3 full-time jobs to be here. You won't be your best often. For those of us who before kids were maybe a little perfectionistic, and those, I think, in graduate school tend to be high aspiring. We like to edit those papers like 5 times, proofread them before handing them in, or, spend all night working on something. We're just not going to get to do that sometimes. That's just going to have to be okay. And sometimes it doesn't feel so good, but moving on to strategies, sometimes what you learn in not being perfectionistic, because you just don't have the resources to be perfectionistic anymore, is that good enough is good enough. You can be a good enough parent. You can be a good enough grad student. So a really big one is a recommendation to use self-compassion, which can be hard, but know you're doing 3 full-time jobs. It's really hard. It's not going to be pretty every day. You can make a list, it's 10:17 right now. I bet all the parenting, people in this room have already had like 3 whole days. If you actually listed, waking up at 2 in to nurse your baby, getting up at 5 because your 3-year-old jumped on your head, diapering people, getting people clothed who maybe are particular about clothing, getting people fed who are maybe particular about food, dealing with a tantrum right before drop off, all the things. Sometimes if you list them out, it makes you realize, what a superhero you are. Set realistic goals and timelines. Know that life events at times interfere with timelines, family illness, having to move, losses in family, bed bugs, whatever, all these things can really sort of slow us down because we need to attend to them. Ask for help. Many of us are not good at that until we become parents, but really get good at asking for help. There are people who want to help, who can provide good help. Set boundaries with unsupportive others. You just don't have time to deal with, people who bring you down or, take away, drain you. And seek out parenting resources. So that is what I'll talk about next. Why do parenting grad students seek counseling? Well, pretty much every reason under the sun. Sometimes people feel disconnected from their non-parenting grad school peers because you can't go to, all the different events or go out, or because you have parenting responsibilities, and also feel disconnected from fellow parents, like at, drop off for daycare or whatever. People are standing around talking and you have to race to get to go teach, or, whatever you have to do. Juggling fatigue, burnout, sense of failure, a student, parent, imposter syndrome, all of the isms, including discrimination against you as a parenting grad student, socio-political concerns, parenting questions concerns. I'm just going to throw up a few more. Basically, there's no bad reason to reach out for counseling. What to expect if you reach out to our Center for Counseling. You'll submit a 1-page form that you can either find online. You could walk into our office on the 6th floor of the Graduate Center. And it's a 1-page form and then a consent form. And there are 3 ways you can drop it off, whether you're, either in person or via email, or we have a confidential virtual drop-off service. You'll hear from a counselor within a week. You'll have an individual meeting with that counselor for about an hour, and they'll get to know both what's bringing you in as well as more about you. The purpose of the appointment will help to figure out together what services would be best, whether services at our center or help with referrals out. And then we'll collaboratively, they'll put our minds together as a staff, together with what your preferences are, and get back to you with next steps. So here are the services that we have. We have individual counseling, so short-term counseling, 10 to 12 sessions, couples counseling, 10 to 12 sessions. Only one partner has to be registered as a graduate center student. We have group counseling, which I'll talk about in a minute, academic consultations if you're stuck somewhere in your graduate journey, workshops, wellness video series, referral services, and mental health education. We do monthly workshops. We have a student health service as well. We used to have a nurse practitioner. We're still advocating for a nurse practitioner. We don't at this time. But we do health education, monthly workshops, and a wellness festival, which is going to be on May 9th. So if I was going to do graduate school all over again, I would, my first semester, come to the wellness center and join a group. Because groups are one service that you could join. You could be in for, the whole time that you're in graduate school. You intimately get to know a group of other people, other students in different programs, different years, who are maybe having some similar challenges. They're really supportive spaces, and as you can see, we have a whole range of them. I've had the real delight of co-facilitating the graduate parent academic support group this year. It's amazing that with everything going on, students actually come to that group, but it really speaks to, I think, how nice it is, how necessary it is to have that kind of support. So we have a really diverse staff. You can look on our website to see, these are just a few of our staff members, to see our team. I'm going to skip over that because I want to be aware of timing, but there are all kinds of barriers, things that get in our way of coming. But please do come. There's no bad reason to come. Here's our website. And then we have all kinds of information on our website, so check us out. We also have video wellness resources. I want to tell you one more thing before I stop talking, which is we also, if you stop by the Wellness Center, we have a gift for you. It's this book. We got grant funding to buy Thriving in Graduate School, and it has a chapter it's for all different kinds of issues that come up while you're going through graduate school. And there's a wonderful chapter that might make you cry in a good way about parenting in graduate school and how hard it is, and also how wonderful it is, and strategies. So it's free. We bought a whole bunch of them to hand out to graduate students. So you can just come by and say that you'd like to pick up a book. And we'll provide you with that. So here is our contact information. I'm going to stop share, and if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Does anyone have any burning questions? Yeah.
I just have one quick one. Is there a wellness center at all of the CUNY campuses, or is it unique to the graduate center? Because I would imagine that maybe there are undergraduate students who are parents and also encountering some of these same concerns.
Absolutely. Yes, there are different kinds of, counseling centers or wellness centers at all the college campuses. They have different amounts of resources. Some are better resourced and some not as much, but they all exist. So yeah, absolutely, students should seek out those services.
We will also have more time for Q&A at the end, and folks who are online, you're welcome to use the Q&A function in the Zoom. But does anyone else have a burning question at this time before we move on to the next presentation? I will also say that when I was a graduate student, I used this wellness center at the Graduate Center, and it literally changed my life. It was wonderful. And I just can't show enough appreciation for their services and the counseling there. It's amazing. I have one quick question. You talked about graduate students. What about postdocs?
We don't, unfortunately. Are there postdocs at the graduate center? Mm-hmm. We don't. It's not in our purview to serve them. I wasn't even aware. But absolutely, postdocs should reach out for care. There's a service that we're sponsoring that actually can, for all of students and all of staff right now, it's called Care Solace. And they connect you, because it's very overwhelming to find, you know, good providers in the city who accept your insurance, who maybe have the identities that you want, who have, you know, availability. So we do that, some of that work also, but additionally, we have this service and anybody can use it. So it's on our website also, it's called Care Solace. So that's a resource that postdocs could use.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Are you ready for your presentation? Let's go. Yeah. Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Meredith. If you move it over a little bit. Thank you for having me. I'm really happy to be here. Thanks to see some familiar faces and a lot of new ones. I'm a faculty member at the CUNY School of Public Health, and I was not a parenting student when I was in school. I do now have a 7-year-old and a stepdaughter who's 13. And I noticed that once I started teaching and having a child that how difficult it was just having those two roles, let alone thinking about and seeing my own students who had the additional role of parenting and whose kind of unique contributions and challenges they were facing went unseen for the most part. So I kind of expanded the scope of research that I was focused on from sexual and reproductive health and promoting reproductive autonomy to the other end of that spectrum in terms of supporting people who do have children, and specifically CUNY students who are parents. So I've done a series of studies with a bunch of collaborators in and outside of CUNY through a bunch of different funding mechanisms that I just wanted to note. That's good. And then as an outline, I'm just going to kind of go over a quick overview of CUNY student parents and financial and academic factors by their parenting status and relationship status, and then some of the barriers and facilitators to academic success that we found, and some recommendations from all of the studies that we've done. So I'm sure most of you know, but just as background to orient us, parenting students are less likely to complete their degree, more likely to be female, people of color, and low income, and thereby widening gender, racial, and socioeconomic gaps in upward mobility. And some of the barriers that are unique include time, money, and bandwidth. So just needing to obviously pay for tuition, essential needs for your family, finding affordable, quality, and convenient childcare, and then the role, strain, and bandwidth tax that comes with working and parenting as a student. So Healthy CUNY is an initiative that lives in the CUNY School of Public Health, and their mission is to promote the well-being and a culture of health among CUNY students to foster academic and life success. So they conduct periodic surveys to assess a variety of different socio-demographic, academic, and health-related factors. And I used one of their 2018 surveys to assess, to really focus on student parents and pregnant students as well. So I found that, and this is weighted to reflect all of CUNY students. So I found about 14% of undergraduate students were parenting, and mostly female. I have to say, I do really have a hunch that number is low. I think it's probably more like 28%. And about 30% of those reported that childcare interfered with their schoolwork, somewhat, moderately, or a lot, and 20% worried about running out of food, housing problems, mental health treatment, had a diagnosis of a chronic disease. About a quarter had an annual income of less than $20,000 for students who are in New York City, and most of them worked full time, but had a high needed GPA. So a lot of
challenges being presented with while they are working, but still somehow managing academically. So this was a study led by one of our doctoral students using that same data that I'll present on her behalf that we worked on together, which was to try to disentangle relationship status, which is a proxy really for support, since we didn't really have any other measures of support. And we suspected that conflating, parenting students into one bucket might be masking some essential differences that could help us understand where to better direct support. So we looked at 142 single parents, 119 married or cohabitating parents, and about 1,800 non-parents. And we found that single parents compared to non-parents were more likely to have debt, rely on food assistance, and have slightly lower GPAs. And whereas single versus married parents were more likely to have debt, work more hours, be food insecure, and have housing difficulties. Using some qualitative work, we wanted to better understand some of the barriers and facilitators to academic success in parenting students. And so we did in-depth interviews to assess just that and to try to find where the areas of needed support were from academic institutions, their staff, and faculty. So for this study, we started with CUNY community colleges. So 6 of the 7 community colleges agreed to participate. We interviewed 49 people, 24 student parents for each 6 of the schools, 9 faculty members, and 16 key administrators, like directors of the child care centers, advisors, student services, directors of parenting programs. And we put together a student parent advisory board, which is one representative from each of the 6 schools. So they helped us with recruitment. They helped give feedback on the interview guide. They helped us learn about the resources they had at their respective schools. And they also helped us interpret what some of the results might mean. So we had 4 meetings over the course of the semester. We paid them a generous stipend of $1,000 per student to offset their time and also to offset the cost of childcare during that time. And our main findings were essentially that student parents were continually expected to self-advocate and request accommodations for things like extended childcare hours, food subsidies, assignment deadlines, etc. And this, what I would consider a burden, although it's not how parenting students refer to it, it was either constrained or relieved by how campus structures and groups operated collectively or in silos, the extent to which faculty, staff, and programs clarified their policies and met their needs, and then their own strategies to managing the myriad responsibilities that they had. So when student services, parenting programs, childcare operated in silos, it allowed for students to remain unaware of resources. And some advisors we interviewed who assessed student eligibility said things like, we expect students to share, to ask for what they need versus us, barraging them with all we have. So they would expect someone who had children to disclose that before, letting them know that there was a child care center, there was a parenting program, things like that. But many student parents didn't disclose that or request assistance because they didn't want to be perceived as taking undue advantage of school resources. Child care centers were a critical resource, as were faculty who were supportive and accommodating. So there were policies that I'm sure many of you are familiar with, like no kids on campus outside of the child care center. You're only allowed to have child care in the child care center sometimes during the hours of class, but not for homework or any other hours. Policies like that were stated, but ultimately flexible, which was then, reliant on the leniency of whoever was in the position of power. But it required that students felt empowered enough to ask for accommodations. So it's understanding of the fact that we don't know why I wouldn't just say, turn this in whenever you need and, and kind of open the floodgates. And the same for childcare directors who are managing capacity issues and all sorts of things. So we need to think about ways, though, to present policies to make clear their flexibility and be a little bit more welcoming for students to be able to disclose any accommodations that are needed. Student parents generally did not feel comfortable asking faculty for extensions or accommodations. They felt like their circumstances, like their kid was sick in the ER last night and they just need to, come in and take the exam even though they haven't slept, were their own problem. They didn't always want to use available resources. And the student advisory board illuminated that they may not want to ask for accommodations because of some internalized stigma of having kids and maybe young and feeling like, they made their own bed and now they need to lay in it. And program champions like directors of parenting programs help to alleviate the burden of needing to ask by making students aware of resources and normalizing their use, like we just saw. So the next slide, these are two quotes that I'll let you read to demonstrate the value of childcare centers and also the expectation of advocacy. So I'll say our take was that although learning to advocate for oneself is important and a good skill, it might not be appropriate to expect that of parenting students who are more often single mothers, people of color, people with limited income. And feedback from the advisory board suggested that in other facets of their lives, student parents may not have been given a platform to advocate for themselves and to witness those needs being met just simply by voicing them. And so to expect it here feels misaligned with their historic experience. And students with children in our sample anyway didn't expect to be granted any favors, didn't want to be perceived as incapable of managing their own lives. So instead of asking, would be more likely to remain silent. And this way, they may have internalized this expectation of self-advocacy as the school saying, you and you alone need to get yourself across the finish line. I'm going to skip over we're doing this in real time when COVID happened. And the main take home was that during COVID, not surprisingly, student parents had increased responsibilities as then being a teacher or daycare provider in some cases, and just prioritizing their children's schooling over their own, and having to manage so much more during that time. On the other side, staff, faculty, and the schools were a lot more accommodating to students' needs during that time. So it was a time that where we can learn from kind of the accommodations that were met. I think I'll skip over this one as well. And then this is a quote from one of the students in the advisory board whose daughter had attended campus childcare before it closed, just talking about how she was managing during the pandemic. Next slide. So in terms of the recommendations from all of the studies that we have conducted, first I would say the systematically identifying students who are parenting to streamline resources to them. This is how they go unnoticed as a group because there's no intake assessment when you come in or even during while you're here, since you might be having kids while you're in school, to identify you as a student so then the school can funnel resources in your direction and develop a culture of supporting student parents to say, we have these, please take advantage of them. And to help assess, what else they need. Next, scholarships that are specific toward parenting students and having specialized campus programs. Some campuses have amazing parenting programs that are really supportive. We talked to some of the people who worked at the one at Hostos and other colleges, but at some of the CUNY schools, there's not really anything that's specialized for them. Centralizing benefits. So to address things like food insecurity and housing, and having a one-stop shop where students can come, I think would benefit all students, but particularly parenting students who can have a lot more mouths to feed and things that they're managing. And so for the school and for faculty to present clear policies and information about what is flexible, what is not, and to reduce the burden on students to self-advocate for what they need and make it a little more inviting. Where possible, to extend co-located childcare hours and capacity. for faculty to be accommodating to parenting students' needs, recognizing that not all students are managing the same things and parenting students may need special accommodations. And lastly, for anyone who's working in this research area, to make sure that parenting students are included as research advisors, given that you need to understand what students are going through in their perspective, and they were an immense help in helping to interpret our findings. That is all from me. I'm happy to take questions at the end. We have a bunch of studies that we've published and tried to circulate in the CUNY Student Parent Task Force that was being run in 2022, out of which I think some scholarships came, but and to pass it on to the next. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So we can have any burning questions right now. Yeah.
That's one.
Yeah.
Hi, I was just wondering, in relation to, like what, Arielle was talking about with the parenting programs here at the GC, you mentioned that Ostos has a program that's pretty good. What, can you say anything about what's good about what they're doing?
Yeah, I think they're just so committed to finding student parents first and then drawing them into the program. Even, during the pandemic, one of them delivered diapers to a student who didn't feel comfortable leaving their house. They connect them to resources for subsidies for diapers, formula, and then they host just support groups for student parents to share, as they're, sludging through all the challenges, while they're a student there, to meet regularly. And it just feels like they do go above and beyond to try to draw students in, make them feel comfortable using resources that they connect them to. And it's been really a fantastic example of a program. But it's pretty rare, I think, in terms of, the extent to which they have helped students with parenting.
Any other burning questions before we switch to talking with parents? Yeah.
No, just a comment. So if you go to CUNY's website, you put CUNY childcare, it gives you the list of all the centers, their age range and things like that, and you can reach out to them.
Yeah, there's childcare centers, I think, at 16 of the campuses. Not all of them, but and they all have their own, run independent, their own kind of policies.
Maybe this can be addressed later too, but I was, so I'm a prospective parent, I guess. Yeah, I don't know anything about but I'm very curious to hear more about I guess maybe their campus specific policies around where kids can be and at what times and all that. So maybe that can be addressed in more depth later, but.
Yeah, I do think it's campus specific, and my understanding, from our own campus, is that children are not allowed outside of the childcare center.
Mhm.
So if somebody wanted to bring in a nursing infant, technically it wouldn't have been allowed. I mean, but that's the thing, I allow it, and so I let students come in with whatever they need. But I think it's because of insurance issues or something. And it's a pretty big barrier to new parents and to parents who have, whose kids' academic calendar doesn't align with theirs and need to be in, so there's a lot of moving parts, and it is a world to navigate as a prospective parent.
So we have a panel of
I have a question. Sorry.
scholars, and I think Parisa is going to start with the first comments and reflections.
Yeah, I actually had a question about the study, if GC parents were included in the study.
So for the interview study, it was just community college, 6 of the CUNY community colleges to start. The survey, one of the survey that was looking at child care and pregnancy interfering with school, and to what extent, was undergraduate campuses. The other study about single versus parenting versus married parents, I have to go back and look. That might have included graduate students as well.
Okay. Thank you. I think I'm up next. So, thank you so much for all that. I really, really, really have enjoyed hearing, everything that these studies have kind of shared with us and learned about student parents, because I didn't know so much of this about our undergraduate students until I started teaching. So I am a doctoral student at the grad center. I'm in my 5th year. I started in fall of 2019, before the blip, as I like to refer to it, for any of my Marvel fans out there. If you have kids that watch Marvel movies, you can also draw that parallel between COVID and the blip. And, I came in knowing that it was going to be hard. Obviously, I had my son, who's now 10, in the middle of my master's. So I was admitted to my MA program in 2012, and I became pregnant in 2013 and had him, in 2014. And so that kind of drew out my master's program a little bit longer than I expected, because I was also working full time before I had him. So it was full-time work, part-time masters converted into unemployment and full-time masters with a newborn. So I never really got to take that time to just be a quote unquote like full-time parent. If there's such a thing, you're always a full-time parent, right? And so one of the things that coming to the graduate center and studying sociology so much more intensively as a doctoral student has allowed me to do is really look at how much of our own kind of impressions and self-identifying norms are connected with what society has just really imprinted on us as what counts as like full-time work, for example, like what counts as being a part-time parent, how much gender plays into this. If you are, identifying as the primary caretaker, whether or not, your mom or dad, how much that really, really plays a role in the way your time is valued or identified by others. For the longest time, I mean, literally until this past year, I'm in my 5th year, I've been teaching full time since 2021. I was referred to as a non-working parent. Like I had, members of my family saying, "Oh, but you don't work. Oh, but you don't work." And it's, I don't even know how to refer to that. I mean, if it were any one of our kids being spoken to like that at school, we'd say that's bullying. But because we're adults and we have to wear, our grown-up pants, we say, "Oh, well, they just don't know any better." And so one of the really big reasons why I wanted to be a part of this panel was because I don't have the data, that's been presented. I can only speak anecdotally as a parent myself, but I know from my experiences and from sharing with my peers who are parents that if you are not a parent yet, and you're planning to grow your family while you're in, whether it's undergrad or graduate school, the reason why I was curious about the differences between that data as well as, even the perception of completing your undergraduate degree as a parent versus completing your graduate degree. It's almost like pursuing your graduate degree as a parent is looked at as like superfluous or like, "Oh, that's extra. Like you don't need to do that." Whereas undergrad, socially, everyone's like, "Oh, well, yes, of course, you want to finish your undergraduate degree if you want to be able to, get a job that's at a certain level that requires a college degree." So even, telling people that, let's say you're going to grad school or, pursuing your doctorate as a parent, they're, depending on who the audience is, they might be, they might look at that as like, "Oh, well, you're just doing that like for vanity, for a title, for a recognition. You don't need to go to school for that long. That's a choice. You could get a job. You have your, you have your college degree already. Why are you doing that?" As if anybody makes those kinds of value judgments on any other professions while parenting, right? And so there are a lot of layers to this that I think we don't get to talk about as much while parenting, and earning our degrees. For my fellow grad students, I would say my biggest takeaway when I talk to my colleagues who are planning to grow their families is just the very, very real differences in, let's say, being pregnant and giving birth during your degree earning, period versus like having older children. Having school-age children is a game changer. Having, the ability to say bye at 9 a.m. and hi again at 3, like that 9 to 3 is a really, really crucial time for parents who are working in outside jobs, let alone, in academia, to be able to, have that window of opportunity. And yet a lot of our scheduling in academia happens outside of that window. I'm so grateful to the Futures Initiative for actually allowing for this panel to take place at the time that it is, because if it were, after hours, as I call it, after 3 p.m., I wouldn't be able to give my time and attention here. I've got 4 little ones. So those are the kinds of kind of logistical barriers that we face a lot in the university setting, because we do have colleagues that are also maybe non-parents and 9 to 5, or maybe they're parents and 9 to 5 as well. But the childcare center, for example, like it closes, I think at 5 o'clock at the GC, right? I never had the opportunity to utilize the childcare center when I was at the GC because I had a 1-year-old and a 2-year-old. The 1-year-old wasn't allowed. There's a 2-year-old, starting time. You're not allowed under 2 at the childcare center at the GC. And there was a wait list for 2-year-olds. So in that one semester where I was in person, I had 2 little ones that I couldn't procure childcare for. And it was a really big deal. In that second semester, again, it was same challenge. But then, by March, everything shut down. And so everyone went home and was working from home. But in the time since then, I haven't come back to the GC for the same types of, childcare barriers and other accessibility barriers. So these are the kinds of things that I think absolutely, if you don't know, the time of the childcare center, like doing all of this homework lives in that space of those burdens that we just saw in the previous presentation. And I would say more than anything, having fellow parents or allies that are willing to, kind of pitch in on moving the needle forward, because that was something that I really invested, I would say, a good 2.5 years of my time in student government, just focusing a lot of my energy on accommodating not just parents, but those who are meeting any sort of insecurities, whether it's food insecurity or housing insecurity, because of the shortage in funding. Obviously, finances are a huge component in this, especially at CUNY, because other universities do have much more financially supportive policies in place for student parents. So these are the kinds of things that I would definitely suggest and kind of encourage either fellow parents or allies of parents to think about and look into, so that they can help push that needle forward, not just for themselves but for everybody following them who's going to kind of face the same challenges or barriers to access that they may have. And I don't know how I'm doing on time. I'm sorry, I didn't look at the time when I started. Just
I have to go in 2 minutes, so I'm going to be really brief. I will respond to kind of humanize some of the data. I will say that both as someone who has managed staff with kids and also as someone who has worked as a staff member with kids, that when we think about accommodations, it's not just thinking about accommodations for parents and making special exceptions for them, because what ends up happening is that because the US system is so unhelpful and individualistic and not really communal in its support, right? We always say it takes a village, but the US really doesn't take a village approach. It takes an individualistic approach, right? Like, this is your problem to solve. And because of that, that actually hurts everyone, right? And so as, for example, as a teacher, being a parent helped me think about how to make accommodations for all of my students, not just my students who are parents. One of the first days of school was also in September, was the first day of drop off. And I walked in like near tears because I missed my son's first day of public school. And I was like, who had to drop off kids today or missed drop off to make to this 8 a.m.? And all of the parents like showed me pictures that their partners had sent them. And I was like, yeah, I missed today too. And that helped them to realize that it was okay to approach me. But in structuring my class, I thought about how can I extend accommodations and flexibility to all of my students, not just my students who are parents, right? Because that impacts everyone. For example, scheduling teaching. A lot of colleagues of mine who don't have children complain, well, I have to teach that night class because I don't have kids. I know that, you know, the scheduler isn't going to ask someone with kids to do that, and that's not fair. And I'm like, yeah, that isn't fair, right? Like, there is a systematic breakdown, right? And it affects the whole community, right? It affects our employers, it affects us, it affects the staff that we employ, everyone, everywhere, right? And so thinking about accommodations and in terms of the curb cut effect, right? We cut the curb so that not just someone with a wheelchair can go in and out of sidewalks, but someone who's carrying packages or a suitcase or children, or, right? Everyone benefits from the curb cut effect. So thinking about how to accommodate everyone. I just want to add two things, two quick stories. Being a PhD or a graduate student who understands how to advocate, how, like, you know, what's right for, like, we just have this higher level of critical and creative thinking through our graduate training, through a college degree, right? Critical thinking skills from a college degree helps me be a better advocate for my kid. My kid came home last semester and said, my teacher thinks I'm a bad kid. And I was like, something is not right about this situation. Why are you internalizing something that is happening in your classroom? And it took me and my partner a while, but because of those critical thinking skills that we get from our college degrees, right? I was able to advocate and reach out to the principal and be like, my kid doesn't normally wake up in the middle of the night with nightmares. My kid normally doesn't have potty issues. My kid normally doesn't have panic attacks, but every morning before school, this is happening and something is not right here. Got him into a better classroom. That hurt. Like, my heart was like aching for this child. And now he's better, right? So like, that degree also has really helped me be a better advocate for my family and for myself. And it's impacted how I teach my students, right? How I integrate life experience as a valued experience into my classroom. So it kind of goes both ways. So kind of coming back to the first presentation, what Arielle was saying, right? It kind of can have all of these joys and benefits as well, and more skills to overcome those challenges. So that's my 2 cents, but I have to go lead another meeting. Thank you.
Thanks, Christina. So Parisa, we're gonna come back to you. Thank you for your reflection as well. We'll come back to you at the end with some questions for all the panelists. I can share for a bit about my experience as well. Definitely what everyone has said resonated with me in terms of Arielle mentioning the good, like the advantages, being able to prioritize a bit better, you know, being forced to be a better time manager. I definitely experienced that, but also the bad and the ugly as well, right? I did my undergraduate degree while I was a parent and then entered graduate school as a parent as well. And the two things can be different, but in both cases, I would find myself in a situation where I would have to wait until my kids went to bed before I could begin my reading or my homework or my assignments or whatever. So whereas my classmates would be able to go home and get straight to it, I couldn't start until I was already tired and sleepy. So I would be up at all kinds of hours, 2, 3 o'clock was my time to get writing done, which isn't ideal as well. Traditionally, we think of the mother or the female identifying parent as the primary caregiver, right? And it's funny because in the same way that I'm the only man or male presenting person here today, I found myself as the only man in lots of my classes, first of all. And then in the field of psychology, even more so, right? So I was often very isolated, didn't have a lot of support in terms of other men. And it was different because my wife was the one who was working full time, and I was working at home and studying, so I had a little bit more flexibility, and I ended up being the primary caregiver. My daughter Genesis is here in the audience. Yeah, so she was at home with me for the first few years before we started daycare as well. So that was a lot to juggle. And I definitely experienced the differences in policies that professors have. I was able to take my children to class with me at sometimes when I had to, but I know for a fact that there were other parents who didn't want to ask, didn't want to risk hearing no, or that they couldn't do it, and so on. So that's definitely a struggle, and something that Merdith raised as well. Gender roles and expectations can differ a lot. Like what people expect from a mother, what people expect from a father, and what people think goes into being a parent can differ a lot. Our circumstances differ a lot, as Parisa mentioned, right? So policies, I think, only go so far, but it's about being human and reaching out to people on an individual level. And I think lots of students and parents need that. We have parents who are thinking about becoming students. We have parents who are already students, but I know that in the audience, we also have students who are thinking about becoming parents or planning to become parents. So I just wanted to touch on that for a little bit as well, because there's no perfect time to do both at the same time, I don't think, right? However you do it, it will be a challenge, but the support that you get from your colleagues, from professors and so on goes a long way to making it manageable and doable. And I think having institutions like the Wellness Center and the services that they provide also do a lot for making it manageable and doable at different levels. At this point, I'm going to pass it on to Estefany, who I know is passionate about this topic and has done a lot of work and a lot of advocacy for parents as well. So I'll let you continue from here.
Thank you so much, Rod. Oh my God. I really love all the panelists, everything you shared as you were going through the stats. I was like, oh yeah, that was me. Oh yeah, that was me. Even the 3.2 GPA, that was me. One thing about me though is I love to break stats all the time. I was like, where's the next challenge? What am I doing to make sure that I set a role model for my children, Armando and Eileen, who are now 14, 15. But starting out in my career, my journey at CUNY, I started at LaGuardia Community College. 2007, I was undocumented. At this time, I did not have children. I dropped out. I felt like I didn't belong. I didn't have the resources. I didn't know how to advocate for myself. Then to 2012, I started my journey again at LaGuardia Community College, this time with a 2-year-old and a 3-year-old, I believe, around that age. And so I was already a parent of 2 children who needed my time, but I knew that I needed to do something much more as a single mom on public assistance and many other obstacles that I was going through. I know this was the only way I was gonna get out of this situation. So foundations. LaGuardia Community College is my foundation, because through that time that I was at LaGuardia, I learned how to advocate for myself. I learned how to take advantage of the resources available for me. I met my mentor, Elvia, from the Crear Futuros mentorship program. She was also a single mom and she was navigating college just like I was. I remember I was struggling with one of my classes and she said, hey, let me take you to tutoring. And I was like, no, I don't want to go. But she was like, no, let's go. So we went into the tutoring office for math, I believe. And, you know, for me, that was really important, knowing that there is a community of people to support you, especially someone that you could relate with. And so I remember last semester at LaGuardia, my grandma passed away and I was living with her. So that was a moment where I had to decide, what do I do next? And that mentor for me was like everything I needed at the moment. She said, hey, you should continue your studies, keep going to college, get your degree. So many years later, I ended up I graduated from LaGuardia, went on to Baruch College, and I was working at LaGuardia at the time as well, as a mentor in the Student Success Mentor Program. And I got to see so many students who were just like me, struggling, student parents. I was like, wow. I was like, and I remember sharing my advice and my tips for success and seeing them also doing wonderfully. And there were students also who student parents who did not have the resources or did not have the support system as I did, and some of them end up dropping out. So, you know, it's one of those things that like, wow, I wish I could do more for our student parent population. Because we know that when we get a college degree, we have so many more opportunities for growth. And I know that as a student parent, time is very limited. However, what I encourage all student parents to do is to really think about the opportunities that you have around you, like what's around you, meet the people that you're connecting with. Soon after I joined the Future Initiatives Program, the CUNY Leadership, that was called CUNY Leadership Mentors. Yes, undergraduate leadership here at LaGuardia, at the Graduate Center. And I created a wonderful community, meeting Lauren, and I'm just really grateful to always be connected to the program, to the Graduate Center. I'm always have wonderful support from Kathy Davison, and to me that's important. And so, because this is such a passionate topic for me, knowing that I've been through that as an undergraduate student, I created a video, a little 5-minute video. You can look it up. My mom has a book bag. And the reason why I created this video was because I saw that so many student parents were having the same insecurities or guilt. I would hear stories like, I feel guilty that I'm a student parent and I'm not spending time with my children. And so with this video, what I wanted to showcase was that your children are so admired, you're their inspiration to keep succeeding. And when I created this video, these children were talking about their moms in college, what they're studying, what are they doing, what they hope for their moms in the future. And in the video, I'm also in it. And I remember I had to step back when I was interviewing my children about what was that like to see their mom in college. And I remember when I was interviewing, I believe my son, he said, my mom, she comes home at 11 p.m. And then I had to take a break because he kept on, and I started just crying. I was like, oh my God, my kids miss me. And so I think that's when I realized that that I just want to make sure that my children were able to see that this is something much more bigger for them to be inspired by. And I have a very close relationship with my children. They've been part of my journey, from LaGuardia, Baruch College, the Graduate Center. Whenever they have events that I can invite them to, I bring them in, they come with me to work. They see me like throughout my whole journey at LaGuardia, Baruch, and now Graduate Center. I wish I could bring them today. And so what I think is really important here is to remember that, as a student parent, you're creating a wonderful life for your children. They're seeing you, they're gonna grow, and they're gonna keep pushing. One last conversation I had with my daughter, she must have been like maybe 5 years old, and she said, "Mom, he's like, I want to go away from college one day." And I was like, "Wait, they're like 5 years old. What do you mean you want to go away from college?" But then I was like, "Okay, it's okay." So she was already thinking ahead, you know, and last thing I told her is, and I asked her, "Hey, Eileen, so do you plan to," just mess around her, "you plan to get your doctorate degree?" "Well, if you get it, I'll get it." I'm like, "Okay." So, with that said, what I would like to say is that, for student parents is to really take advantage of all the resources you have around your community. Definitely for me, therapy has been really important on this journey. It's good to know that the wellness center is here at the Graduate Center, so I'll be making an appointment too. But advocate for yourself. I'd like to share one last story. When I was a student at Baruch College, I was taking my capstone course. I was doing my final presentation for My Mom Has Book Bag Video. A professor, Behar, who I know I believe she's the director of Data Viz. And I wasn't able, and I had babysitting issues. I couldn't get someone to take care of my kids. So I asked her, "Hey, can my children come in to come into the class with me? I need to do my final presentation." She's like, "Yes, of course, come in." And then I remember, we were having some issues with, entering Baruch College. She came downstairs from the classroom and she advocated for me. She's like, "Estefany needs to do her final project and she needs to do it. And she already asked permission. She needs to come in and her children are allowed to be in the classroom." And for me, like when she did that for me, she advocated for me. That was a whole life-changing situation. I was like, wow, this is amazing. And as someone that works at LaGuardia Community College as well, I'm always thinking about, I always have to also advocate for my own students because they need us. They really need us. If you're in college or you're in your graduate school, you're here for a reason. And because you want to pursue your goals. So it's really wonderful to see a community of people to support our students. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Estefany. So now we can open it up to questions from the audience here in person. Folks on Zoom, please add your questions to the Q&A forum and we'll address those as well. But I think I have a question for the panelists and anyone can respond to this. For people who are not yet parents, people who are currently in school, either undergraduate or graduate school, and planning to become parents, what do you think are the main considerations? What can they put in place in this planning stage, if anything, to make that transition to a parent scholar a bit easier? Maybe Arielle, would you like to respond?
Sure. I was thinking it's a great question, and what came to my mind was like, this is America, so like build your own village, like DIY, like find those people in your life that you want close to you while you're raising kids who would, who at last minute when the kid is sick and you have to give a presentation or whatever, that they'll pop over to your home and just, be there for the 2 hours that you need to go out, or, build those supports. If there's anything mental health wise that you feel like you want to address, or you just want to have a space to reflect, Also build that community for yourself, whether it's a group, whether it's finding a therapist that maybe you're not in like weekly therapy with, but you can go to when you need to, that you just have, so you're not like in the middle of, right after you give birth and you're totally overwhelmed and, that you're trying to find like providers, that you already have that set up for you, like set up safety nets for yourself everywhere you can and support networks and people who are going to cheer you on when you feel like you're a terrible parent and you're a terrible student. And so that's what comes to my mind.
Thank you.
I just thought of something. Thank you so much, Arielle. And thank you for such a moving, I guess, presentation, Stephanie. That was really, really powerful. Advice that I would give for sure, now looking back, to prepare yourself is if there are things that I would say about yourself that bring you joy, or that can help self-regulate or get you through maybe a task that's mundane or monotonous, because there's a lot of those as a parent. Identify those and kind of get in touch with those things that can help give you just that little bit of joy to get through those humps. An example I'll give is like, whether it's like folding, a mountain of laundry or taking a crying baby for a walk, etc. Right? Like those are things that, I have to do all the time. And yet something that would have given me just a little bit more of a push or gotten me through that for me was always music. But because I felt so disjointed from who I used to be before I was a parent, I almost kind of put this wall between myself and music after I became a parent. I didn't even sing for years. And I used to be a singer. I went to performing arts high school, right? So because these feelings come up inside of you of like, who am I? Who did I used to be? No, I'm not that person anymore. Now I'm this. You almost like, what's the word? I'm blanking on the word. It's not subliminally. I'm blanking on the word. Do you see? This is another thing. Get used to not remembering stuff. Just try to almost like what?
Subconscious.
Yeah, subconsciously. I'm like, there's a sub in front of the word. What is it? You subconsciously almost like eliminate those as options for yourself. Like, no, I can't go out with my friends, but like I can put on a song that I love and just sing along to, and it will give you joy, going for walks. Like those are things that I would say, oh, it's just too much to get the baby dressed up to go outside. I'm just gonna sit here instead. But being inside would start to make me feel down because I would get like cabin fever and feel like I haven't even been outside of the house for 2 days, So recognizing what your own blocks may be, and giving yourself, because it is super isolating, especially if you don't have help when you're alone, with your child, having those moments to kind of be like, wait, I know that like, if I do X, it will just help me feel better in this moment right now. So let me focus on just trying to do X so that I could feel just a little bit better. And then that feeling a little bit better in that moment, not to be too dark for you guys, but like there are times where you're like just in a rut. Recognizing those moments will help you just get over the hump. So then the pathway becomes a little bit more clear. Going for that walk daily may open up, your ability to be able to see the rest of your day a little bit more clearly, just because you're getting some sunshine and some fresh air. And yes, there are, that's going to look different for everyone. It's going to look very different, let's say, getting down a flight of stairs with a stroller and getting back up them, right? Or if you don't have a very walkable neighborhood, etc. But again, like trying to look into what are the things that are going to bring you a little bit of joy. If it's just getting to like do 10 push-ups or something like that, like giving yourself a goal to just be active in some way to get your body moving, that's for you and not in service to the small human you're next to. Sometimes even that just makes you feel a little bit better. And rediscovering the things that, used to bring you joy or things that may be different now that bring you joy now I never used to garden, I never used to be connected to plants whatsoever. But now I find myself going to Trader Joe's and picking up, a calla lily for $5.99 because I'm like, this is really beautiful and it's going to bring me joy, just having it and nurturing it. And having it in my space. So just trying to stay in touch with who you are and the things that can help make things a little bit brighter when it's really tough, when the going gets tough, you know, because it's going to happen over and over and over again. And being able to touch base with yourself and find those things, I think is huge before becoming a parent.
Absolutely, thank you.
I would say that it's pretty clear that academic institutions need some help. Recognizing student parents. And so, you know, even during this doctoral admissions cycle, I had applicants ask me, like, what do we do to support parenting students? And I think those kind of questions get people who are in charge thinking about, well, what should we be doing for parenting students? You know, luckily I had an answer, but some people don't. And then it kind of triggers maybe the more students that are asking these types of questions, it triggers some response. And so I think knowing that right now, unfortunately, the expectation is most likely that your instructor, the people who, you know, the staff, the resources of the school, they're looking for you to ask for what you need. And maybe it's not necessarily how it should be, but that is the expectation. So if, you know, you meet with the benefits person, they don't mention that they have a childcare center, you need to be, you know, if you're able to be more proactive in asking about some things and disclosing that you're a parent, you feel comfortable doing that, if they've created a culture for that, that would help you to be able to connect to resources that are available. I would also say look into Title IX, just to understand your rights and I advocated in our school, we have a syllabus template to put that in, so every syllabus has it, so it's very clear what, as a pregnant or parenting student, what kind of accommodation should be made for you in that school, so to understand what your rights are.
I'll say pretty quickly. I think that it's important just to see what's available in your campus, what resources are available, and I'm gonna say it again: advocate for yourself. Don't be shy. I know it's hard. It's easier said than done. But at the end of the day, you know, the institution is here for you. They need to support you in whatever way you need in order to get your education. So they just ask questions, what is available for me? Speak to your professors. Professors are always really welcoming. And if they know what you're going through, they're gonna help you. And that's really important.
Thank you.
The question. Yeah, I have a question. It's, we'll see how it comes out. So I take what you're saying about advocating for yourself is obviously really important, but I deal with this like constant feeling that I'm disappointing every single person in my academic journey. I'm disappointing my professors because I have to ask for an extension on the extension I've already asked for because my son's going through a sleep regression and I didn't get any sleep. And I'm working 3 jobs and it's just too much. And then I just feel like, do you know what I mean? I just feel like this sort of like delinquent student that just is constantly having to get accommodations. And then I feel like I'm disappointing them because even when I get an extension on an extension, I'm trying to do my best, but it's just such not my greatest work that I'm able to produce because my brain is so muddy from just having this 3-year-old child, you know, meeting me all the time. And then I feel like I'm disappointing my fellow students that I'm in groups with because I'm trying to do my best to like meet deadlines for them, but there's like a lot of things you've got to manage. Then I'm disappointing my students because I'm also an adjunct at Brooklyn College and I'm constantly late for my class because I got to drop off my kid at daycare and then the bus doesn't work and then I walk off the bus without my wallet, which I did the other day because I'm so exhausted. Like it just, and then also when I'm always being like, can I have an extension? I'm so sorry, group, like my child, oh, students, my child. I just feel like my whole identity is being a parent and a graduate student. And to your point, I'm so sorry, I can't remember your name. Like, I have completely lost touch with who I used to be, but it just doesn't feel possible to reconnect with that because I have to put this like this part of me at the forefront of everything I do is this qualifier, like I'm not gonna be very good and I'm not gonna be able to get the thing done in time because I'm sorry, I'm getting emotional, but I just have this, I'm only one kid. Forget about like people who have 2 kids, forget about, people who have 3, 4, 5 kids. It just feels so hard to manage everything. And that I just feel like I don't know. So, I guess my question is like, yeah, we have to advocate for ourselves, but how do you deal with this constant feeling of overwhelm and that you're just asking and asking and asking for too much? I always feel like I just feel like I don't know. I just feel like I'm never able to produce what I need to produce to show my professors and students the kind of graduate student I can be, and then forget about how I feel about never having the time for, my son. It's just hard.
Can I say something?
Mhm.
I feel you so much in so many ways, and one thing we must remember is that we're human, we're not robots, And more than ever, I think it's really important to just stay in touch with yourself and really like just admire yourself that you are, excuse the language, you're a badass. You are doing amazing. You're doing things that a lot of folks wish they were in the position of doing. So just acknowledge that power that you have within you. And if you need to ask for those extensions, ask them, you're on the journey, whether you decide to take a class, one class per semester, 2 classes, whatever, just stay on that journey, whatever that journey is, you're gonna get there. But remember to be in touch with yourself. We're not robots, we're humans. You got this.
Thank you.
Thanks, Parisa.
Yeah, I just wanted to add on to that and say that, it's a byproduct of the society we live in. Somebody else mentioned it before, everything's about productivity, right? Even, hearing the word productivity, this is like late stage capitalism at its finest. You're defined and identified by your level of productivity. And it's just so, I don't know, like it's disturbing that we internalize it to the extent that we're breaking ourselves. But I want to remind you that like raising a child, at the end of the day, just because other people are not openly acknowledging and commending you for that work, you can never forget that in the sense of, like this is one of our future, citizens, like our future participants in this society that we're building, and you are cultivating who they are and shaping who they are to be a better person, to contribute to our society and be a part of our society. And so there's so much value in that. And I hate using the word value because I don't want it to be associated with like a monetary thing, right? Like this is just in terms of the richness of what you are doing, that you don't live in a society or a culture that understands that or acknowledges that. And I think we don't value children enough to be able to even recognize parents' contributions to shaping who they are for our future. And so please, please, please don't ever let that, pressure to perform or pressure to produce diminish what you are doing, in terms of at home and for your child and for the world when you are being, a wonderful parent to your child. Because that, like Stephanie said as well, there's so many people who wish they could be a parent and they can't, right? And so those people, they get it, they understand, just how amazing it is to be able to parent. But for those who don't know, like, who cares if they don't? Like they really, really, at the end of the day, they'll get it in 20 years when, your child is being a incredible, member of our society and paying forward all of your hard work. So all of your papers are wonderful. All of your, presentations are wonderful because you're doing them alongside this incredible work.
Arielle, and then Merdith.
Okay, I'm gonna talk quick because actually I'm sorry that I have to hop off at 11:30. But I was just so moved by what you said, and I think and I really resonated with what others panelists responses were, and I just want to add like we've all been there. Anybody who's been a parent has totally been there and been that person, you know, just like dying inside, asking for, you know, this and that, and it feels terrible. So some of your professors will completely get it and have incredible empathy, and they might not share their stories with you, but you know, like just their hearts are like aching for you. And other people won't, and you have enough to carry, and you don't need to carry concern about what other people, you know, think of you, or you can't control those things. The best thing you can do for yourself, for your family, for, you know, for everybody around you is just, you know, take care of yourself. So I don't know if you're, I can't see who was talking, and I don't know if you're a graduate student, but if you are, like, please come to the Wellness Center, please, because just having some support, like, it's so human what you're going through, and it sounds like it's really weighing on you a lot. I'm so sorry to hop off. I've been so inspired by this panel. Take care, everybody, and come see us.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. And I just want to say from a faculty perspective, like nobody else gets to decide your worth. If I certainly don't get to decide. And if someone is going to judge you for what you think is subpar work, and you know, like, can you go? It's not for anyone else to judge. And I know it happens, but it probably feels like it is happening more deeply than it is. And I'll just say like rhetoric, or like the narrative of like, I only have one kid. I used to use a lot too. But it's not helpful. One kid is a lot of kids. 4 or 5 are a lot of kids, but one kid is
Cool. Thank you. And you have lots of support in the chat from the online people as well. Folks definitely identify with that. The feeling of, you know, not giving your best in every aspect of your life, not being a good parent, being a good partner, or being the best at your job, is definitely something that a lot of us can identify with. And as we wrap up, like one of the main reasons why we wanted to do this event is for the building of community, right? So you're not alone. And I think recognizing that, hey, you know what, other people are going through the same thing that I'm going through, really gives you some comfort, to know that, you know, you're not dumb, you're not subpar, you're just a human being who is going through something that lots of other people are going through too. Does a lot for you as an individual. So I think the community part of it, and I know that there's a graduate student chat at the GC, there's a graduate student parent WhatsApp group, and yeah, and you know, we share resources, we share stories about things we've gone through with trying to get childcare, we share nannies, babysitters. So, I mean, the community is a huge part of it, and just being a part of that community adds a lot of support to the experience.
Can doctoral students at the School of Public Health join those things?
Parisa, I think are you one of the admins for the WhatsApp group?
I'm not an admin. I believe I know 2 of the admins though. And yes, I think any of the doctoral student, anyone at the GC can join.
Yeah, we're technically separate, but we are doctoral students outside.
You're our people.
Yeah.
You can absolutely join.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And another thing, just from the faculty perspective, I do try to reorient the conversation. If faculty members are saying something, this is not the best, you know, this is not the strongest student, blah, blah, blah. Instead of that, to have more of a, I have been in many conversations where the discussion is like, the student has a lot going on right now. So instead of like, this is not the strongest student. So just know that on the faculty side, like, we have an understanding that it's that people's lives are complicated.
Right, can I just add one
Sure.
thing? I know we're wrapping up, but I would also advocate that it's okay to just take a break sometimes.
Yep.
I totally get everything that you just shared. I have a 3-year-old and a 4-year-old and another one away. And I was going crazy trying to finish my PhD and trying to work a full-time job and also being an adjunct at Brooklyn College. And sometimes you just have to tell your committee that, listen, I didn't do the work. I need to take a mental health day, and you just have a day of doing nothing. And if you have somebody inside of your community who can watch your kids even for like 3 hours, who can just have some me time, it goes a really long way. So definitely try to speak to people in your community, and it's okay to just do nothing sometimes and to just be like, I'm beat. I can't think of anything else. I can't write. I can't provide that abstract. I can't do anything. I'm beat. So have grace with yourself. You're doing a great job, and find your community. And it's here at the GC. It might be outside of the GC, but have grace. You're doing okay.
Can I add one more thing?
Sure.
Sorry. And I find that when, for example, for me, when I take the moment to just do nothing, I love going hiking in nature. I find that I'm able to come up with ideas for my projects for school or for work. And having that moment to just for yourself, or even an hour, let's say if you want to read a book, just do it for yourself. Don't forget about yourself. Most importantly, at the end of the day, the first person that should always come first is yourself. And then everything else follows. That's how I believe we should live.
Well, thanks everyone for participating. Thanks for joining online. We will definitely share the recording with all the attendees.
And a recap blog post.
And the recap blog post will be on our website, futuresinitiative.org. And also, if you go to our YouTube channel, you'll also be able to watch the recording of the event there as well. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
And there's lots of food for those who are here in person. Please take some food, some juice with you, otherwise it'll just go bad.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, all.